welcome to the Cinema ATL podcast. Cinema ATL podcast is a weekly podcast that examines the world of entertainment through the lens of local Atlanta filmmakers. That would be us, your hosts. I am Michael D. Friedman, and that is
Martin Kelly.
And this week we have a big movie review for you. We're looking at Godzilla vs. Kong, which is available on HBO Max and in theaters. But first, before we get into that, Martin, why don't you tell our listeners how they can help the podcast out?
Well, they can help us by commenting, liking, subscribing, and rating it on their favorite podcast format. And I want to say thanks for bringing us back. I mean, there was a scare last week about us going off the air, and thanks all our fans for bringing us back. But definitely subscribe, and where you can hear us is all the popular podcasts outlets like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, and even Google Podcasts.
Yeah, well, thanks again. Yeah, for everybody. Like it's all your hard work that brought us back onto the podcast airwaves.
And thanks, Ryan Reynolds, for not pressing charges.
You get rid of those guys. They couldn't even pronounce the name of the podcast correctly. I mean, come on, what's going on? I know it's spelled Cinematal, but it's Cinema ATL.
That's
but
right.
Anyway, if you want to tweet us, you can always get us at Cinema ATL, not Cinematal. But if you're phonetically spelling, it is Cinematal. Or you can get my personal Twitter at Badger33.
Or hit me up at Marte_real1.
And don't forget the Instagram. It's at Cinema ATL Podcast, all one word. And we got a lot of fun stuff going on there. Recently wrapped up our Movie Madness tournament, which if you hadn't listened, we had a wrap-up podcast on about that a couple weeks ago. So
that
was a lot of fun.
Was a lot of fun. Definitely. And if you want to check us out on Legacy Internet, you can go to cinemaatl.com.
Point your Netscape to Navigator 2.0 Gold to www.cinemaatl.com.
That's right.
And you might want to give us a thumbs up on Ask Jeeves while you're at it.
Please. We could use it.
Anyway, enough about this. Let's get into our big movie review. All right. Big movies are back. We got Godzilla versus Kong in theaters. So successful. Actually did close to $50 million at the box office this week, which is a huge thing for theaters. And in fact, AMC and Regal saw spikes in their stock prices just because of that news itself. So maybe we should look at this movie in that way while we review it.
No, I think that's a great point. I think we should do that. And it's funny because we haven't talked about it officially here, but I actually have gone back to theaters in recent days, and it was a great experience being back in theaters. Of course, I was in one AMC and one Cinebistro, and they both are sort of socially distanced by nature because these are the newfangled theaters with the big seats and everything else. So, but at the same time, it was really good, and I felt very safe. I also brought my own sort of cleaning supplies to be sure, but at the same time, I think it's close to being time to go back to the theaters.
Right. I'm ready to get back at it. In fact, I thought when we talked about doing this, I thought about going to see it on the big screen, but instead, since it was free in quotes with HBO Max. Right. You have to pay for HBO Max, of course. But I watched it on, my streaming service instead. But
no, I thought about it too. I just didn't actually have time to get to it. I had a busy weekend, and then during work week it's kind of tough. So
right.
I thought about it too. But you're right. I've got it on HBO Max, so I'll be able to just queue it up in my bedroom.
Well, before we get into the movie, just a reminder, spoiler warnings. We try to avoid spoilers as much as possible. We might slip up here and there, but, this movie, I don't think there's really any spoilers you need to worry about, and we won't go too far into it. But yeah, Godzilla versus Kong, and we normally do a synopsis here, but the synopsis is the title.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's basically it. Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
If you don't know what's going on, then, I don't know what to tell you.
And officially, it's Godzilla battles Kong while humanity hangs in the balance, but it's just Godzilla versus Kong. You don't need to know much more than that.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of interesting. Directed by Adam Wingard, and he's of course responsible for Blair Witch and VHS. But he actually had worked on, and this is kind of a tidbit I heard about recently, is that he actually worked on um, developing a sequel to Peter Jackson's King Kong, and they
Oh,
remembered him from that, and that's why they brought him back when they
interesting.
rebooted it, because the Peter Jackson version of King Kong is not part of this
Right.
cinematic universe, which we'll talk about at some point. But Adam Wingard was actually working with Peter Jackson on that film that didn't happen, but then he ended up coming back and doing a Kong film
That's
anyway.
interesting. Yeah, it's. I found it kind of interesting when I looked him up after I watched the movie that his background has basically been in horror. With
Right.
the Blair Witch is really his biggest title that he's done, the Blair Witch reboot, and then he had done some segments on the VHS and series, and then I think it was also like what was it, the alphabet,
Yes.
the
Hmm.
I can't remember what that's called. It's like the A to Z's of murder or death or
Right.
something like that. I
Right.
can't
Right.
remember
Right.
what the name of it. But I guess he got a start in horror. So it's kind of interesting that he takes on this big blockbuster action movie that may save cinemas. We don't know. It had 5 writers on it. So 3 story by credits and then 2 official screenplay writers. Eric Pearson, who did Thor Ragnarok and Black Widow, and then Max Borenstein, who actually did the first 2 Godzillas of this cycle, Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then Kong Skull Island. So he's got a lot of experience with these
Yeah.
characters.
And interesting to note, one of the original story writers is Terry Rossio, who, of course, big success with Pirates of the Caribbean. But
Right.
obviously, it was probably from back in the day, where he probably worked on it way back in the day when this was in development.
And then the DP, director of photography, was Ben Saracen. He's done some good action films, Unstoppable, which is a pretty underrated action film. It's pretty good action flick if you haven't seen it.
Hmm.
He did that, and he also worked on World War Z and some other films. But
Yeah, yeah.
so we'll get it. I guess we can get into the cast a little bit later, but I mean, what people are really here for is the spectacle, and I think the DP, and the director did a really good job doing that. Right, so you're here for the popcorn action flick, and based off of just if you're into that, I think they did an excellent job in conveying that action between these 2 gigantic titans that are destroying massive
Well,
amounts of the world.
you're right, but I really came in for an allegory of an allegory that I thought was going to be a part of this film. But
Right.
no, you're absolutely right. It's all spectacle, and the spectacle is really really great. It's great and it's bad, and I'll talk about that as we start talking about the movie a little bit. But absolutely fantastic spectacle, really well done. DP and the director, and the visual effects, all of that
Right.
was done really really well. So there's no arguments for that. And so if you don't know that that's what you're coming to this movie for, then too bad, because that's what you're getting, and they do a
Exactly.
great job with it. So that's like you said,
Yeah.
those guys
So
deserve special credit.
watching this at home, I was really thinking, man, I really wish I went to see this in the theater because I think I would have even appreciated it more in that regard. And um, not to say that I'm totally satisfied with this movie because we'll talk about that a little bit, but yeah, the action sequences are really well done, and a lot of these movies, it's easy to lose track of the sense of scale and other things when you're just showing explosions and things like that. But these set pieces are, I think, really well done. I mean, I think the action sequence at the beginning of the film where Kong is fighting Godzilla on the aircraft carriers and things like
Yeah.
that is just really really cool scene. I mean, it was really fun to watch. It was really intense
Right.
and you, like I said, you get the scope of it, you get the scale of it, and it's just really cool.
And it's nice to see. I mean, we did a movie, and I won't say its name, but people could probably figure it out. We did a movie that was supposed to be a big action film, and we kind of commented that it didn't feel like it was very big because of
Right.
how it was done. And of course, this is totally opposite. This feels huge. and it's just it's what these type of movies are made to be, grand, grand scale, and so you can't complain about that part of it for sure.
Right. But what you can complain about, let's get onto that.
Yes, I guess we need to.
I failed to mention the cast when we were introducing this because it's really not necessary because
Yeah,
it's really they're really not needed in this film, and what
yeah,
they have them do is not very logical, and there's like a lot of gaps and plots and things like that. But to just go over some of the cast, we have Alexander Skarsgård, who plays I guess the de facto lead character. There's really no lead character in this, but he plays one of
yeah.
the doctor, Nathan Lind. Millie Bobby Brown is back from Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which I have not seen. So maybe Martin, when we talk about this, you can fill in a little bit of gaps on that for me.
Sure.
Rebecca Hall plays Eileen Andrews, who is the Kong specialist. She's the
Right. Right.
scientist that's been studying Kong. Brian Tyree Henry, who you might know from Atlanta, the show,
Hmm. Hmm.
plays a crazy podcaster named Bernie Hayes. And then it's filled out with some other actors that are good actors, but like it's just like they're
Very good,
kind of
actually. Yeah.
wasted in their roles. Kyle Chandler being one of them, Julian Dennison, who you might remember from Deadpool 2 and some other
Yeah.
things as the comic relief sidekick of Millie Bobby Brown's character.
Yeah.
Damian Bashir plays the mustache twirling bad guy,
Hmm.
and young Kaylee Hoddle plays the little girl who has a
Yeah.
connection with Kong. And I think if you ask me, out of all of the characters in the film, she's the one I had the most connection with out of
Definitely.
all those actors that we named.
And
It's
they're
kind of
all
interesting.
great actors. Even Asa Gonzalez, who's done great work in the past, but she was there to
Right.
be to look to, I guess, to stand in for corporate villainy, I guess. But
Right.
you know what I'm saying. But yes, you're right. I think Haley Hoddle did a really wonderful job in that part as the little girl who actually was the Kong whisperer,
Yeah.
if that's the term that can be used. But she was really good, and she is the one who you have some sort of connection to out of this cast. And this is a great cast. I mean, honestly, this is a fantastic cast. But what you said is correct. They were almost not even necessary,
They're
in this film.
tangential to the plot almost.
Right,
Like,
right,
it's like,
exactly.
um, and then one other person I wanted to bring up is Lance Reddick, who's who's eighth billed in this movie, but he's he's like
Yeah,
in one frame of the of the
he's so
film.
literally one scene. Yeah, literally one scene.
It's not
And
even like he's not even like the focus of the scene either. He's just like he
no,
says like one thing, I think.
yeah, he delivers a little bit of information to Kyle Chandler, and then there you go. That's it. See you
Yeah.
later.
So obviously he had a bigger part that they must have chopped in the editing floor. But because yeah,
Right.
that would talk about a wasted actor. I mean,
Yeah.
geez,
Yeah.
he's a great actor. I just actually
No, he's
watched
definitely. Hmm.
John Wick 3 for the first time this weekend as
Okay.
well, and he's in that as
Okay.
well. And I love him in
And of
his
course, The
John Wick
Wire.
movies. The Wire,
Very fine
Fringe.
performance in The Wire.
He's great in
Oh,
Fringe.
Fringe. Yes, I forgot.
Um, but anyway, yeah. So basically, it's this movie is meant to be a popcorn movie. It's meant to be seen
Yes.
in theaters, even though it's
Hmm.
on HBO Max. It has the spectacle that you want in an action film. It's got big monsters beating the crap out of each other.
Yep.
Surprising another addition to this film, which we won't get into because I don't want to spoil that.
Yeah.
But something you might have known if you're a Godzilla fan makes an
Sure.
appearance in this
Absolutely.
film,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool, but also kind of the way they did it was kind of wasted. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so let's talk about what didn't work with this film.
Well, it's funny. Like I mentioned that I was back and forth between fun and really stupid, fun
Right.
and really stupid, and part of it is in the same is in the same vein. Like, for instance, there's a segment where they go to a location called Hollow Earth, right?
Right.
Which is fantastic looking. It's awesome. It's extremely, you know, beautiful cinema. You know what I mean in terms of spectacle. However, I found myself asking, how is this lit? How is this place lit? Even, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no
Right.
logical way that this looks like this. You know what I mean? And so that kind of thing happened over and over, where it's like it's all fun and games, and then it makes you question, like, what the hell is
There's
supposed to be happening here?
giant leaps of logic in this movie
Right.
that just can't be comprehended. And if you think about it, somebody was trying to talk to me about this film, and I was just like, it's best if you just don't question it
Right.
because
No,
you'll
totally.
enjoy it more.
Totally. Totally.
But yeah, the more you go down that rabbit hole, the more you start questioning pretty much everything in this film. Like, you mentioned the Hollow Earth thing, which is kind of a far fetched theory anyway, but it's kind of the basis of this world that was created and
Hmm.
has its roots in kind of some of the mythos of these characters. But yeah, the way it, like you said, the way it's presented is really cool. And it reminds me a lot of Avatar, honestly.
Absolutely. That's exactly
Um,
right. Yeah.
and to me, Avatar is not a good movie either, but Avatar looked beautiful, and this kind
Right.
of gives me the same kind of feelings to that. Um, there's a place. I don't want to give away too much, but there's things in the Hollow Earth that don't make sense for these mystical beasts to have built. Like,
Right.
did they build this like arena or whatever that they
Right.
end up in?
Yeah.
Like, or is there
Like,
some
who?
more higher
Yeah.
being
Who?
power?
Yeah. Who
Like,
built that technology that exists there?
right. Like, you're not telling me these giant beasts did that because, yeah,
Or,
they're not
yeah,
going to build
they don't have opposable thumbs in some cases. How
it.
are they going
Right.
to do that?
Right. So I don't know. Maybe they're hinting at a higher being that maybe
Right.
they'll explore further down the road in these
I think
movies.
I
But
think that's probably right, but then at the same time, it makes this experience, really weird. Is to
right,
figure out, like, what the hell, man. They got a theory of this place existing, but they don't have any theory beyond that to know how it exists, and especially with what's in it when they find out what's in it,
right.
they have no
And then
idea.
the way they get there is just ridiculous too. It's like, oh, like you have to have these magical transporter things that are like um
Yeah.
the technology doesn't exist. Oh, but we have that. You're like,
Right.
okay,
Right.
oh, convenient. And then here's the thing that really got me on this movie was, so I mentioned Alexander Skarsgård, who plays like this scientist who is disgraced scientist because of this hollow earth theory, but he's just some scientist who's like in the basement of some research institute that they come to for help. And maybe I'm missing something because I didn't see Godzilla King of the Monsters, but I don't believe he was even in that movie, was he? I don't know.
No, he's not in that movie, but they do actually. I mean, they kind of
Is
explain
Mitch,
that in the sense that he says he doesn't work for Monarch anymore.
right,
Now,
right,
Monarch is who Kyle Chandler actually works for in this film,
exactly,
and of course,
and
he
was set up
also
in Kong
gets set
Skull
up in the
Island,
other film. The
yeah,
Monarch, the Monarch is a big part of the world
right.
of this cinema universe. So,
But here's the thing about this guy. So he's just a scientist who has this theory, and so
mhm.
they recruit him, but then all of a sudden he's like leading the mission. He's basically commanding aircraft carrier out at sea. Like,
and hundreds, if not more, men in
right.
resources. You know what I mean? And scientists and soldiers and, like, what?
And then at one point he says these vehicles that they magically have called the heaves, which stands for something which
Mhm.
stupid. But there's things called heaves. He actually calls them helicopters at one point, right? He's like, "Oh, you're
Right.
gonna fly our helicopters," and then the Isaac Gonzalez's character is like, actually they're called heaves. And then the next scene, he's piloting this thing
Right.
that he called a
Right.
helicopter 2 seconds ago.
Exactly. He, whatever
And then we
crash
got the
course.
end, he's like become like this super pilot guy. And I'm like, you're this dude that just happened to be a
And
Hollow
suddenly,
Earth
yeah,
fan.
exactly. He never heard of these things 2 days before, and now he's Han Solo with them. You know
And
what I mean? Best pilot in the galaxy.
I'm
somehow.
like, couldn't they just get another character to pilot this thing?
Well, not
Maybe get Lance Reddick to pilot it
yeah,
since he's obviously
exactly.
not being used.
But he works for Monarch, so they couldn't
Right.
get it put him with Alexander's crew. So, but yeah,
So, I
it's
mean, that's just one of
so
the leaps
silly.
in faith that you have to make to appreciate this movie.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You're right. You got to turn your brain off, but at the same time, it's almost impossible to turn your brain off that far to
There's
not notice
almost
some of
so
these
much
crazy
you can
things.
in these types
Right.
of movies. You can't just turn your brain off. You can dial your brain down, but they want you
Right.
to like turn it off and unplug it and then plug it back in again,
Yeah.
reboot
Totally.
it.
Totally. And like I mean, honestly, and the way we're talking, like all the human characters are terrible, but they're not terrible. I like some of them. I like the podcaster. The
I like them as
conspiracy.
tropes though. Like they're not
Yeah.
characters. They're just
And
parts.
I get yeah, but I did enjoy Millie Bobby Brown and Julian Dennison and their little dynamic, and he's just so
Well,
I like him a lot. He's so likable.
so this is my thing about this film. And granted, like I said, I did not see Godzilla King of the Monsters. I saw
Hmm.
Godzilla and I saw Kong Skull Island. In fact, we reviewed Kong Skull Island when
Right,
it came out,
we
and I
did,
actually appreciated it. I liked it.
right. Well, we
When
had problems with that too, but
you didn't like it, but I
yeah, we had
liked
problems with that.
it. But yeah, why why did they not build this story around Millie Bobby Brown's character? Like she should have been the one proactively discovering these things and not.
Yeah, I
It's really
think
more of a side C
no,
story. It's not even a B plot. It's like a C plot to
yeah,
this
I think
film.
I think you're right, but here's why they had to do this, and just my take on it. She's tied to the Godzilla thing, and of course, she's got a lot of respect for Godzilla, and that's built in the other film, right? So you
Hmm.
didn't catch it, but yeah, she believes in Godzilla being a force for good, that kind of thing. So give her that, and then her dad having to believe the same thing. You know what I mean? So Kyle Chandler, he actually works for
Right.
the side that believes Godzilla is a force for good, right? So yes, she would be a great center to it, and you're right, building her because she wasn't as underwritten in the other movie as she is
Right.
in this. So any other, in that regard, it would be great. But they felt like they had to bring a Kong team in. And so that's why they added really good actors. I mean, Rebecca Hall and Alexander Skarsgård. I mean, they're
Hmm.
excellent actors. So they became the Kong team. And then it became a juggle between the Kong team and the Godzilla team in terms of humans. And so,
Well, it's also obvious then the filmmakers want you to be on Kong's side in this film, right?
mhm, mhm,
I mean, you do realize that Godzilla is being played for other by external forces to be the
right,
bad guy, but Kong is the good guy, right, in this film. So I
right,
guess that's kind of why Millie Bobby Brown's character is kind of shuffled to the side. But they had a good thing going with that dynamic between her and Julian Dennison and Brian Tyree Henry. They
right,
could have been a lot more fun and driving the plot forward. Instead, they are very tangential to the plot. Even when they become involved, they're not
right,
truly involved. And even when they have their heroic moment,
right.
it's not
No,
earned and it's not
yeah,
valid almost. It's just like,
totally.
okay.
And you're right. They had so much heavy lifting to do with the subplot, which we're not going to really talk about on the Godzilla side of things. That they had to they had to give all that time to that, and then of course, you know, they had to give a lot of time to the fighting. So,
Right.
so I guess you lose a whole lot. But you're right. I mean, they were wasted, and yet they had potential to be a really good element in the film. So,
And Kyle Chandler is like
oh yeah,
he's barely above Lance Reddick in this. He's
no,
like
totally.
barely used in this film.
Totally.
It's
Yeah,
just
I mean
him
it
calling Millie Bobby Brown on his phone, basically. That's his
right.
scenes, right?
He get yeah, well, he gets information. Him and Lance talk about it. He gets a call. He has to go, and then he has to call Millie. That's that's his function in the whole movie, which is
That's his arc.
horrible. Yeah, which is horrible.
I think
Um,
this goes to show you that like with these types of movies, you really have to. I mean, people are there for the fight, the
right,
Godzilla and Kong.
right,
They're there to see this, and you really have to limit your amount of characters, human characters, because they're fighting for all this external time that they don't
Right.
have to
Right,
build these
exactly.
characters.
I That's the perfect point. Is that, and we, this is probably what my biggest issue was with Kong Skull Island, is that there were so many characters that they that some of them were
Right.
absolutely ridiculous, right?
But in that one,
Because
you only
they
had
should.
Kong, right?
Right, you
But
only had Kong, but you had too many other characters that
right,
most of them got short shrift. Same, and here you got double the Titans, right?
right,
That's what they called them, double the Titans. So you need even more screen time to dedicate to their action, and then you've got double the cast almost that you had with either of the other movies, right?
right,
At least what presented to be important cast members, and then they end up getting such short shrift that they were completely unimportant at all. So yeah, I mean it's problematic in that regard, but that's what's I guess that's what's kind of been problematic about blockbusters forever. You know what I mean? Especially spectacle blockbusters. Some people do them really well, and some people do them and they look great and are fun, but they don't make good movies. And this is the case with this. This is not a good movie, but
right,
it does have some really cool aspects of it, I guess.
right. And I would agree on that. I think this is kind of the movie that we needed at this point,
Totally. Yeah.
almost, right?
Yeah.
That, like you said, turn your brain off and sit back and enjoy the spectacle type film, and then it's a really good way to kick off people going back to the theaters. And I think it showed how desperate we were for this
Yeah.
film basically blew every pandemic box office numbers out of the water.
Right.
You
And
know,
it also blew out, even HBO Max has done a few. It's actually outperformed on HBO Max as well.
right?
So
Yeah,
I think you're right. I mean, that's what I'm going to take away from this. It's positive overall that this big movie came out and is but been as successful as it has been under these conditions. So I'm
right,
very happy about that part. Um, so I think that's the big takeaway. You know, the one thing I'll say is we talked a little bit about it early on in the beginning of lockdowns, is like we were hoping, and this it's not this movie's fault. We were hoping that maybe different kind of movies would start to come out, because
right,
there was jeopardy of the big stakes movies, the big tent movies that weren't going to work as much anymore. Now that they might, which is great, I hope they do, but that means we may not get these mid-sized movies that I had hoped would become a trend. You know what I mean? So I think that's
right.
probably the
Although
case.
I think we have opened up the possibilities of more streaming services looking for original content. So I think yeah, we're talking about theatrical. I think yeah, we're probably still going to be on these blockbusters type things in
Right,
the
right,
theaters, whereas the Netflixes and the Primes, Hulu's, all those of the world will probably get the more mid budget stuff moving forward. But
right.
yeah, I mean
I
that's
think you're
just a
right. I
guess,
think you're
but
right.
I think that the studios might even have to go that way, or the theater companies specifically, AMC's and the Regals of the world are going to need these big spectacle movies to draw
Yeah.
people back to the
I,
theaters, right?
yeah, that's probably true. It's probably just the demand. The demand, the theater exhibitors will demand it because they really feel like they need it to draw the people back in. You know,
Right.
which I agree they probably do, but it's a little disappointing. It is early on. I mean, maybe it plays out differently. Maybe they put some in the pipeline. Mid-size that they'll eventually release in theaters. But it may be just like we all just put it on pause for a year, and now we're going to go right back to you
All
know
right.
the same kind of movies that we always get.
Well, I mean, it's hard to believe we've already talked 30 minutes about this film.
I know.
I know we had another topic that you wanted to touch on. I mean, is there anything you want to touch on real quick about that?
Well, it was just a thought, and because of like my mixed feelings on it. I mean, this is obviously trying to be a whole new cinematic universe in and of itself. The
Hmm.
monster universe, the monsterverse, or whatever. And I just posed the question: is it really going to work? Because this movie is essentially similar to the last couple of movies in this genre. Is sort of a reboot and nostalgic, right? But
Hmm.
can these things really end up being as rich a cinematic universe as Marvel has? I don't really know. I
Not if
kind
they
of
do
doubt it.
these types of movies,
Yeah, I think
because
that's what
you
I'm
need to
saying.
have that human character element to really build. I mean, now if they had taken Millie Bobby Brown's character and like really gave her some, real character arc and real things to build on, they could have started those seeds. I think part of the problem with this specifically is they were taking the Godzilla movies and the Kong Skull Island, which, like I said, I actually like Kong Skull Island. You had problems with it, but still, there were two different eras. Like
Hmm.
Kong Skull Island takes place in the 70s, right? Or
Right, right.
60s, maybe even.
Hmm.
I can't remember now.
Yeah, 70s.
And now they're trying to merge these two, and you don't have any of the characters left over from Kong Skull Island to really build this
Right,
cinematic universe. Like the John Goodman characters, the John C. Rileys are all gone now, right?
right, right.
So you didn't have those characters to build that cinematic universe. So you really have to build it around the characters more than building it around the IP, right?
No, yeah, I am not really optimistic that this can be a very rich cinematic universe. Honestly, it can be full of spectacle, and I think they want to because I mean, you don't hire A-list talent like Rebecca Hall and Alexander Skarsgård and continue Millie Bobby Brown and Kyle Chandler. Those really good people. You don't hire them if you don't expect to sort of maybe keep this thing going. But you're right. They need to get back. They need to give them their due. These actors and characters, if they're really going to make hay out of this.
I want to relate this to DC a little bit because I think they fell into the same trap as DC, whereas instead of building the universe steadily from the ground up, they went right to let's take our two main characters and pit them against each other. So you have Batman versus Superman, and everybody knows
Right.
that was kind of a disaster.
Hmm.
This case, I don't think it's as a disaster for this franchise. Like this is actually in line with the rest of the franchise, but still, you haven't built up enough of the characters enough for us. Like it really would have been a good step for us to get another Kong movie set in present day. Maybe give us those characters that we see in this one, set them up a
Hmm.
little bit more. Maybe
Right.
do another Godzilla with Millie Bobby Brown and introduce Brian Tyree Henry's character then, and then have them clash, right? Because I
Right.
think there's just so much going on, and to try to introduce new characters or new ideas is just impossible at this
Now, I
point.
think
But
exactly. I think you're hitting the nail on the head, though. It's the approach of not taking a slow and steady approach to the race and try to get a big bang going right away, see
right,
if it'll work. And who knows? It could be related to I don't know for sure, but it could be just related to uh, the studio's idea of how to do things. Because obviously both of these are
right.
Warner, Warner Brothers, and they've decided to go that route both times. And I think Marvel and
Well, it's
Disney
not
have
just them though.
done that.
Universal tried to do it with the Mummy, and they were going to
Yes.
do this whole dark universe thing with all their monster
Hmm.
characters, and then they realized that was a non-starter. And I think everybody just like got really attracted to these ideas of these, shared universes that Marvel did so right that they
Right.
just saw, ooh, shiny object, we need to
Yeah.
copy them, but they didn't do the time to do the groundwork to
Right.
really build
Right.
it. So,
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that I know there's been some issues, but I think that's one of the things I like about what Star Wars is trying to do with its series. You know what I mean?
right.
It's trying to build things from the ground up, and then eventually, hopefully, their movie their movie franchises will come back in a major way with all the work they're doing on the series side. I hope that's the case, but we'll see.
Yeah, I
We'll
mean
see where that
WB's
goes.
got so much IP that they could really build stuff around, but I think they really need to take a step back and look at that. Like, and especially now that they've got HBO Max, they've got the opportunity to do these
Absolutely.
same type of series as Disney Plus, right?
Yeah,
Take these
absolutely.
characters, put them in a a series, or
And
build out your
let people resonate with these characters at a series level, and then they'll follow them into the franchise films. Hopefully, you know what I mean. I think
right.
I think you're absolutely right that they need to do that. Take a step back and rethink their strategy.
All right. Well, I won't even get into the trailer for Space Jam 2, which is another WB.
Oh
WB,
my!
like, let's take a bunch of IP and shake it up and put it into a bubble.
I haven't seen the trailer. I haven't seen the trailer.
Oh,
So.
it's like Ready Player 2.
Oh, great!
It's like they took the same ideas, dude.
But I like
But
Ready
that's
Player
another
One.
story.
I like
That's
Ready
another
Player
story.
One.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll like Space Jam 2.
I doubt it.
The Ready Player 2.
I seriously doubt it. That's it.
Anyway, yeah, we've gone on too long. Let us know what you think about Godzilla versus Kong, or let us know what you think about this new monster universe or whatever they're calling it. See how do you think it'll work? What's your opinion? Also, let us know what you think happened to Lance Reddick. We're still wondering. If might put up some "Have you seen them" posters. But anyway, that wraps it up for this week. We want to thank you all for listening. Please share and rate this podcast where you see it. And also, we want to thank Eureka Failure for providing the music as they do every week for us. And Martin, do you have any final words of wisdom for us that are uplifting and positive?
They don't seem to be They don't seem to be working. Whatever I say, it seems like the opposite is happening. So I will just leave it at, hey everybody, keep your head up and stay positive.
Well, all right. Thanks again for joining us. We'll be back again next week, so we'll see you then. Bye.